Warning, the following video has a ton of issues, including lots of cringy bits, changes in audio due to re-recording, some continuity issues because this was filmed for a different time, and changes in my voice because I have no idea why. You have been warned.
We are going to have to act if we want to live in a different world.
Hi there, I'm Rider Viper, and welcome to my channel. 2020 was a good year for Command & Conquer, a real-time strategy game that took over the world. Developed by Westwood Studios and celebrated with its 25th anniversary along with the release of the remastered collection. It's the best damn thing since Windows 95. And guess what? We're still playing CNC. Mission accomplished. I could talk about its history, but there's plenty of other videos from the community that explains about Command & Conquer. I'm instead doing something related to the NOD Obelisk of Light. This iconic towering defense looks a bit like the tail of a scorpion, fires a huge laser, destroying even the toughest of tanks. It looks like trouble. During the lockdown, I found that my only source of entertainment was watching YouTube videos on my phone. During the dark time, I did not own a working PC to play Command & Conquer or to edit any videos. This phone was my salvation. And I misplaced my phone clip, so I couldn't attach it to a tripod or keep it standing on a table to watch any videos. So, I built a phone stand out of scraps I had at home. Introducing the RV Cardboard and EVA Foam Holder 2020. Hold your phone safely while dangling from a broken tripod stand. Includes a standing accessory that looks like a silhouette of a Tiberium refinery. Batteries not included and does not support charging cable or headset while vertical. So you can see my problem. Something had to be done. And this standing accessory gave me an idea. I was not going to build a Tiberium refinery. I am going to build an Obelisk of Light. Out of the scraps I have. I quickly searched the internet for inspiration, found some fantastic renders by fans, and even a 3D printed one. Assuming it was 3D printed. I really want to build the Renegade version of the Obelisk, especially since right now it's the 19th anniversary of Renegade. Happy birthday, Renegade! Heck, if I had a PC during the lockdown, I'd have at least been playing Renegade X. Look at that thing! It's freaking gorgeous! To be fair, this video was filmed just before the remastered collection came out. So, to celebrate the 25th anniversary, I choose the remastered version of the NOD Obelisk. The reference I'm using is seen here on the 25th anniversary collector's edition poster I found randomly on the internet. I seriously would love to have this set. I'd kill all of GDI if it meant getting this set. But I'm broke and money is scarce. Since I won't be getting my hands on one of these, building the NOD Obelisk for myself is as good as it gets. And this is the best image I could find as a reference for the remastered Obelisk.
Several months later.
Thank the CNC fanbase for uploading this image. Man, if I could tell you how awesome the community has.
Get on with it! Yes, get on with it!
Now, on to our feature presentation that this video was supposed to really be about. Don't worry, it won't go on for 12. I begin my construction process by clicking the NOD Obelisk icon in the sidebar.
Building.
Then I start sketching the structure and calculating how high it should be. And maybe 6 inches, and if we take the square root of the size of the phone and apply the weight ratio along the hypotenuse and making sure it's parallel and all done. Then I translate that to some used A4 paper to make some stencils. This process seems long, but that's because I had a lot of free space on my camera before running out of space to film the rest of my build. To make the rear of the obelisk, I had to stick 2 A4 sheets together because one sheet wasn't long enough.
Low power.
We also had a power cut at this time. I didn't have a long enough ruler, so I used one of my board game boards to draw those long straight lines. Using a piece of cardstock, I cut out the shape of the capsule to use as a guide to mark where I'd be cutting out the port lights for the front of the obelisk. I carefully cut out the stencils using a box cutter. I wanted my obelisk to have a bunker door at the back, so I made sure to include that on my stencil. For my luck, I had some thrown away event invitation cards. They just happened to be the right size for the obelisk base. For the walls of the obelisk, I had some leftover 4mm EVA foam from a previous job. I salvaged those and began drawing the outlines of the walls, and then I cut them out. By this time, it was getting dark.
I now have a set of Batman spikes for my next costume.
I cut out part of the stencil while directly on the foam. It is a lot more work than it looks like, and a lot more mistakes will happen. This is not recommended. Realizing my mistake, I cut out the other stencils before cutting the foam. See how neat it looks if done correctly? I also cut the front and back wall into separate segments. I had a broken OTG adapter which I used to press into the foam to make small notches in the front wall. EVA foam is quite durable, so it needs to be pressed several times to leave its mark. Next, I made a paper stencil for the focusing crystal for the tip of the obelisk. For this, I used some flat transparent plastic from old packaging, which I cut out to make the focusing crystal. But I needed to make several passes to cut through, as the plastic was quite thick. Once cut, I quickly took one of the small scraps to see if I could fold it, and it cracked out of shape. So folding was a no-go. I tried lightly cutting and folding, and that seemed to work almost decently on the test pieces. I then lightly cut the main piece and carefully folded to get the shape I wanted. I then cut a red piece of paper to use as the inside of the focusing crystal. From the remaining strip of plastic, I cut out small panels to use for the front ports of the obelisk. With more parts taking up valuable table space, it's glue gun time. So let's plug it in.
No sé vivir solo.
5 minutes later.
Yes, all that time waiting for the glue gun to heat up just to glue on these few bits. And since that's done, here's some more leftover parts from one of the lightsabers I built. I could go into detail on how to build a simple LED circuit, but I'll leave that for another video, and instead I'll list what I'm using here.
Wait a minute!
Red LED strip, connectors, 9-volt battery, wires, a switch. Since these were left over from some years ago, I need to check if they worked. I then lay the LED strip alongside the inside to get an idea of how to attach it. At the same time, I started hot gluing the other parts as needed. For the inside ports, I attached some cardstock to hold the plastic panels in place so that I can also remove them if needed. I used some skewers and foam to hold the LED strips in place, but also to be able to remove them in case I need to replace them in the future. And it's time to remove the packaging from the 9-volt battery. And this obelisk is shaping up pretty nicely.
Wait a minute!
Now, time to cut the tip of this and replace it with the focusing crystal. However, that proved to be an error in judgment. I hadn't calculated where exactly to cut to match the size of the focusing crystal tip, because I hadn't taken the foam thickness into account. I also ran out of space on the camera and couldn't film how I fixed this problem, and how there were more problems which I had solutions to. So, part of the focusing crystal easily broke off. I then built another one. This new one is the right shape, but is larger than the previous one. After some assembling, I needed more ground space to hold the foam and wiring in place. The cardstock was a bit smaller than needed, so I decided to go with a thicker EVA foam as the base. I carved a slot on the edge of the base and attached the switch. The wire runs underneath and into the corner of the base. I also cut these 2 removable slots. But why? Searching through some scraps, I cut a piece to attach the edge of the base, as it wasn't a perfect rectangle. Remember, I'm using scraps, and this just happened to be a leftover piece from something else with the edge cut off. Some of these scraps I used on the inside and under the obelisk to make it more rigid. Cutting up some triangular pieces, I used them as a sort of decorative barricade. These are actually to keep the phone in place so that it doesn't slide off the base. Some of the scraps came directly from cutting the obelisk walls, and they were enough to make this bunker-looking door that I previously planned. And it helps to prop the back wall up by itself. What? That back wall is meant to be removable, and it needed some scraps on the inside to reinforce it, as 4mm EVA foam is flimsy. But there was another problem. There are gaps with light seeping through. Easily fixed with more scraps, which I attached to the back wall and to the top of the obelisk. I needed a bit more height on the base, so I used this bit of EVA foam that I was saving up. I quickly measured and trimmed the edge, then sorted through more scraps like a jigsaw puzzle.
Moments later.
Is the construction complete?
5 minutes later.
I unnecessarily used more hot glue than needed, but the scrap parts were a perfect fit for the outer layer surrounding the obelisk. I cut out more slots for this base also. This is the reason. The removable slots are for the headset and charging cable. And on testing, I found that the phone was not high enough. The wires could be damaged if used this way. So, I added an extra layer under that base, using more scraps. This should work. The slots, which I decorated as a small barricade, was too flimsy, so I replaced it with a thicker piece, which I could treat as ground dirt, and I could incorporate a decorative element onto it, such as Tiberium. I felt the door was heavily lacking something, so I put together a small access panel out of tiny scraps of foam and a piece of sprue. On to more major problems. At this point, I was so high up that I started playing with sand, because it was time for texture basing. I applied PVA glue to the lower base and covered it in sand for the dirt texture that I wanted. There was a piece of corrugated cardboard which was a little larger than the lower base. I trimmed and hot glued this to the bottom of the base just before spray painting. Now, while I wait for that to dry up, I need to think about flocking and maybe put in some dried tufts or dead bushes. For this, we can use some dog fur. Dog fur? What kind of sick psycho bastard do you take me for? Just because there's a dog lying around the house doesn't mean that the dog can be used like leftover scraps from another build. So, we will instead use some rope or twine. I guarantee you that this piece is not made from dog fur. 99% positive. I'll make a separate video on how I make tufts. After the sand has dried, I then prime the base along with some of my miniatures in black spray paint. And to the next step, with some missing footage. Really, unbelievable that I had so little storage during the lockdown. So, just imagine me painting and dry brushing the base in brown to make it look like dirt. Next, I drew the NOD logo and cut it out to make this stencil, which casts this cool shadow. Attaching it to the lower base with masking tape, I stippled red paint as I intended to have a worn-out looking logo. I specifically used crimson-colored Pidilite Fevricryl fabric acrylic paint. I used a bit too much and didn't quite get the effect I wanted, so I went in and touched it up while fixing up the stencil edges, and it turned out better than I intended. And that checks this off my list of things to do. PVA glue is not strong enough to hold these up, so I used some foam pieces to keep them upright. I'm not a fan of using super glue, and I didn't think to use the hot glue in this instance. Next, I painted some Tiberium crystals to use as deco, but these didn't turn out right. I'll do another video on how I make and paint some. I'm also not an expert painter, and anyone trying to learn from me will probably be smudged for life. I hot glued these down on the removable slots. But something to note is that I didn't realize at the time that they obstruct the view of the lower screen, so I will be removing them in the future. The final piece of deco this late at night, a tiny NOD logo. I needed some red electric tape, but I misplaced mine, so I have to use a black one for now. My tiny sketch is used as a guide to cut as a side-by-side reference for painting the NOD logo. Then I attach it to the top of the door. And
Construction complete. Warning. Obelisk power up detected.
I finally have it, a NOD Obelisk of Light of my own. It has a lot of problems, but I'm pretty happy with it.
Your efforts have landed us here, my faithful friend.
Apart from the issue with the Tiberium crystals blocking the view, which can be removed anyway, the phone fits perfectly, and as a bonus, the size is also perfect for the tab I use. So, primary mission objective achieved. I play a lot of tabletop games and build terrain. This Obelisk of Light will go nicely as a random centerpiece in Gaslands. Secondary objective completed. Someday, when I have an office of my own, this will be a fantastic desktop deco to have a few conversations over. What do you think about this build? Let me know in the comments. I'm Rider Viper, and this is my scrap build.
Mission accomplished.
Hey, thanks for watching the video all the way to the end. This video was supposed to be edited entirely on my phone back in June, but that proved to be too difficult, and nearly was the end of it. But the project was saved thanks to this PC. So a big thank you goes out to Wasan from Critical V for this awesome PC. It helped me get back into editing after my day job, and it helped in making this video even more unnecessarily cringy. Do check him out. Links to his videos are in the description, as well as links to other videos of some of the CNC fans out there. See you next time.
No, seriously, I can't believe I made this entire thing out of scraps. Scrap pieces here, there, everywhere.
Battle control terminated.